what brings you to Midcoast, Maine today, visiting with us?
Well, the Senate has this odd schedule where they're in session 3 or 4 weeks and then a week, and it's called district work time or something like that. So it's an opportunity to go back and sort of see what's going on. I spent the last 2 days in Aroostook County, today in the Midcoast, and tomorrow in York County.
A lot of people are talking about bipartisanship, but I guess the question is, what are the concrete steps that you see for us getting there?
Well, first, let me sort of give you the lay of the land as I see it. When I went down there, I wasn't naive, and I didn't think I was going to get everybody to link arms in the first 100 days. The place is very partisan institutionally. A lot of party line votes, and particularly on major issues. What I found, though, is that it's not so partisan personally. And what I mean is that there's a lot of relationships that aren't partisan. And I've gone out of my way. I've so far had one-on-one meetings with about 50 senators. And I'm bound and determined to meet the other 90, all 99. And it's the big issues like gun control, the budget, where there is this sort of partisan stuff. But then there are a lot of secondary issues that you never hear about because they don't involve a big fight, that tend to be bipartisan. A major piece of legislation called the Marketplace Fairness Act that allows states, that requires online retailers to collect sales taxes and remit them to the states. This is a totally bipartisan bill.
Isn't there a little bit of a difference, because now you're forcing smaller online retailers to not just charge for sales tax, but to know what to charge each individual state's sales tax.
Yeah.
Because when they're buying from out of state, you got to charge it to that state's sales tax. So
the state has to
burden on business.
No, the state has to supply the software, and it's free, and it's a software function. I mean, 10 years ago it may have been a big deal, but it really isn't. You put in the zip code, the software automatically says, okay, in this zip code, this item has 5% sales tax. So, and there's an exemption for companies that have less than $1 million of sales.
But isn't it true that the online business has to register with every state that they want to sell to?
Well, I don't know if they have to register.
They have to have software for each of the states.
Yeah.
So if you want to potentially have to sign up for software from 50 different states.
Absolutely. Yeah, but they don't have to sell in those states. They're selling in those states. If they want to sell in Maine, they register. And again, I don't know how you justify Amazon selling a pair of pants in Rockland, Maine, and charging $100, and the guy in Rockland, Maine, who sells exactly the same pair of pants has to charge $105.
Maybe that same mom and pop business that you're talking about in Maine also wants to sell to 49 other states online.
Yep.
And now, why not make a registry that there's one or a software that's one place for all 50 states, rather than making it burdensome on each state to do that? Well,
I think if the states want to collect the sales tax, they have to supply the software. I mean, and it's free, so the business doesn't have to pay it. And if it's a truly mom and pop business, if their sales are less than $1 million, they're exempt. And again, it's a question of fairness, and it's not a new tax, because this is a tax that we all owe anyway. You're supposed to pay a use tax on everything you buy, but a lot of people don't, of course. The hard part about the budget is that the budget involves the core values of the two parties, and it makes it harder to compromise. The core value of the Republicans now is no new revenues. Core value of the Democrats is no changes to entitlements. Both of those are involved in trying to solve the budget problem, but if both sides go in with those as non-negotiables, then it makes it very hard to resolve the differences. It really goes even deeper than that. The core value, if you go deeper than budgets and stuff, it's really about the size and scope of government. The Ryan budget is all about shrinking government. It's not really about debts and deficits, it's about smaller government. The Democrats' view is the government has an important role to play and should be of a scope and scale that's able to deal with national problems. And that's a basic philosophical argument that goes back to the founding of the country, and that's what my speech was about. It was about how this argument we're having now is at least the 10th time in American history we've had almost exactly the same argument about the size and scope of the federal government versus the states versus the individual. And so, of course, the other big one now is immigration. We've got a serious group of 8 senators, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, working on a comprehensive immigration reform, which if you had told me 2 years ago that was going to be happening, I would have been very surprised. Is partisanship going to go away? No, not as long as we have parties. But I see little tender shoots of bipartisanship that maybe we can get some of these things done. Immigration will be a big test, I think. If we had been able to get 70 votes on gun control, it would have put the House in a difficult position. But now the House can just sit back and say, well, we don't have to do anything because the Senate didn't do it. Right. And that was a big disappointment.
Thinking a bit about where you fall on the gun control issue.
Yeah.
Is that issue pretty much dead? Is there a place where do we go from here, I
Well,
guess, now that this has happened?
If you listened that afternoon, it was interesting because the initial vote was 55 to 45. And then all of a sudden, it was 54 to 46. What happened was Harry Reid switched his vote because it's a parliamentary maneuver that allows you to keep a bill alive. Yeah, I voted on the prevailing side and I move that we reconsider the vote. The motion is then put on the table, so technically the bill is still on the floor. Harry Reid did that, and so the bill can come back. But in order to bring it back, they're going to have to know they have the votes, and 5 or 6 Republicans have to change their votes. The most disappointing thing to me was last night when I read an interview with Senator Toomey, who was the prime sponsor of owning the Joe Manchin, and he said that he thought either one of or the principal reason that so many Republicans voted against it was because it would give Obama a legislative victory. I just find that appalling. The criteria ought to be what's good for the country, not whether the president wins or loses.